Welcome to Sports Tech HQ, a show where we explore the cutting edge of technology transforming the world of sports. I'm Jeff Hintz, and today we're thrilled to be joined by Alex Ocampo, co-founder and CEO of Ganance, a company that has created an ingenious wearable activity tracker that's changing the way consumers make their decision about buying a watch. Alex, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Excited to share what we're building at Ganance.
Yeah, excited to have you here. So let's talk about kind of innovation, entrepreneurship, and what sparked we'll get more into the product and what it is, but talk about like the idea, or was there a specific moment in time where you said, I need to start a company?
So I don't think it was in that order.
Okay.
I don't think I was like, I often hear the story of like, oh, I really want to start a company. And then you're on a journey to find the thing that's going to start a company.
Yep.
I think for me, it was almost a bit flipped of there's just a problem I was obsessed with.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, to solve this, I need to start a company or build a product and start a company. And for me, it just comes back to a single watch that I love and wanted to wear more. So I got a watch when I graduated from Tufts for my oldest brother, first generation Mexican-American family, graduating from top university.
Yeah.
Everyone's super excited, super proud. And
I just got goosebumps, by the way. Yeah, it's cool.
I'm about to move to New York City to start my career. So to celebrate, my brother gives me a beautiful gold Citizen watch to have with me, and I'm obsessed with it. I wear it everywhere. I feel like it completes you. It kind of made me feel like, okay, this is who I am, showing up. Yeah. I remember one moment I was in a room with the CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty at the time. Mm-hmm. Only a few seats down.
You're in the room with the CEO at IBM.
Yes.
At how old were you?
I was like 23, 24.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
And I just had this massive wave of imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing here? Like I don't belong here. Like, what am I, like, I have no business being in this room. And just I remember this moment, something as simple as just like looking down and just catching my eye to my watch, just sort of gave me the calm. It's like, relax, you're here, you made it. Yeah. You're here for a reason. You have lots to contribute. And that just allowed me to be present back in the room. And engage. So this was around 2014, 2015. Okay. Fitbit had come out, yeah. Apple Watch is coming out, and everyone in the office is doing step challenges. Who's going to get the most steps that week. So I would wear my watch on one wrist, my Fitbit on the other wrist, because I didn't want to miss out. And I could never quite figure that look out. But what had happened was I was sold on the data. I'm very big into personal growth, personal development. I think, seeing your data over time, you can't change what you can't measure. Mm-hmm. So, I really loved the data, and what happened slowly, it wasn't kind of one night or, one moment, but over time I stopped wearing my watch. Mm-hmm. I really did value the data. Fast forward a few years, my oldest brother who gifted me that watch, he had a health scare that he thankfully survived from. It was in that period of uncertainty that I remember the watch he gave me that had been sitting in a box for years at that point. I was like, how could I possibly stop wearing this watch? It's so meaningful to me. Yeah. It represents graduating school, starting my career, the love for my brother and my family. Yeah. I was like, oh, I chose my data over my style. And kind of that first sort of aha moment, if you want to call it that, it's like, why can't I have both? Yeah. Like, why do I have to choose between my watch and my data?
Right. Wow. So starting that moment in that room at IBM with the CEO there, and you had this thought, like, where do you go from there? How do you begin the journey of entrepreneurship?
You have to get started. Like, if you wait for the right time, the right time's never going to come. So finding the simplest ways to get started. Talk to people is the simplest, cheapest. Talking to people is usually free. Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're doing it wrong. Unless you're doing it wrong. Yeah. See if it's a problem you're having, see if other people are having it, right? Just starting with that kind of informal customer discovery. Sure. So for me, it was anyone I saw wearing a smartwatch or band, I would ask them two simple questions. And I mean anyone, whether it's like the barista serving my coffee, the doctor or nurse, giving me my COVID swab. Yeah. Remember that?
Focus groups.
Yeah, those are my informal focus groups. Yeah. So I would ask them two basic questions. Like, one, do you like that device? And 100% of people said yes. Mm-hmm. They're like, I like seeing my steps. I like kind of the social elements of it. I'm like, great. People like the experience. My second question was, if you could be wearing anything on your wrist, would you be wearing that? specific device.
Okay.
And 100% of people said no. It was always like, no, I'd rather wear like a watch, but I can't give up my data. Okay. And that to me sort of showed or gave me the confidence, like there's something here, right? We all love the data and the experience around these devices, but none of us like the vehicle of delivery or collecting that.
Yeah. Now let's dive into the product. The name of the company, maybe where you came up with the name, but specifically, what does the product do and how does it work?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the product and then talk to the name.
Okay.
So the high overview of the product is we make any watch a smartwatch with our thin modular wearable, attaches to the underside of your favorite traditional timepiece, connects to your phone through Bluetooth, and that's how you get all the health information you love and the smartwatch functions that make your life a little better. The name of the company, Ganance, is a spin on the word in Spanish, ganancia, which means to benefit, to profit, to win, under the premise that we should be benefiting from our most valuable asset, which is ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's our mental health, our physical health, our emotional well-being.
Pretty amazing, that little chip. So tell us what the product, what do you call it, a disc or a?
It's the Ganance Air.
The Ganance Air.
HEIR.
Oh, okay, I like
up
that.
Next in wearables.
Yeah.
It's very light, very thin.
Okay.
Little play on words.
So can I? Absolutely. So what does this do? Tell us what it can track.
Yeah, so think about it in two buckets. You have your health tracking and then your smartwatch functionality. Mm-hmm. So on the health side, steps, active minutes, calories burned, sleep. We can do kind of heart rate tracking through your mobile phone. And then with that basic information, you can infer different data points or different metrics, how much time of the day you're spending active versus sitting. There's a lot of kind of interesting things we can do there. Yeah. And maybe we'll get into this, but I think one of the things we're doing a bit differently is, who are we building for? And it's someone we're calling our corporate athletes. Mm-hmm. So I think that sort of comes, when you focus on who you're building for, I think that's where you have unique opportunities to build something special there. So that's on the health side. And then on the smartwatch functionality, call, text notification. So you get a little vibration if you're getting a call or a text from someone you want to be buzzing your wrist. Call rejection and silencing. So just tap your watch face to silence or reject a phone call. You can control your media. So stop your music or videos, just tap it. We're working on tap to pay. So right there, just
no kidding,
from your regular watch, just scan at checkout.
Wow. How are you integrating with some of the ecosystems that are already out there, like Apple? How do you even start with being able to, like, your hardware being able to kind of basically interact with the software on a different company side, like Apple?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed in the wearable ecosystem, or just a bit more broadly than that, is there's generally people want others to integrate with them because it also helps their usage and bumps it up. Yep. So a lot of companies, Apple included, they have Apple Health Kit, right, mm-hmm. for you to integrate with Apple Health, right, because they want to drive that. But a lot of the other wearable companies have open APIs that you can tap into to both kind of push and pull data back and forth between apps. Okay. So like generally, being in service of the end user who sort of want their data in one mm-hmm. place, and the ecosystem is built for that. Yeah.
So you have a lot packed into the Air.
Yeah, it's a lot there. It's 3 millimeters thick by 30 millimeters in diameter. And we chose 30 millimeters as a good place. We could fit a nice sized battery in there to last long enough. That's always the challenge with hardware mm-hmm. is the battery size. But 30 millimeters is medium to large women's watches and like 85 to 90% of men's watches. So we figure with our first generation product, if we can serve 85% of the market, sure, that's a great place to start. There's going to be edge cases. You have your smaller watches, you have your rectangular ones. Mm-hmm. But as we continue to grow and develop, we'll be able to serve more of those use cases.
Yeah. I still have tons of questions about the product, but tell us about the timeline. So when did this happen? When did you start it? And how did you get to where you are today?
The kind of idea was probably end of 2019, like all great ideas. Did nothing with it for a while.
Yeah. Did you write it down though?
No. What would happen is, so I have a lot of entrepreneurial, business-minded friends. So I remember in the pandemic, we started like an entrepreneur circle, as I was doing some other things before that. We'd always talk about, what is the business you want to start? What is the product? And this was always my answer. I was like, I want this product to exist. Mm-hmm. And then I think at some point, someone's like, why haven't you?
Yeah.
But I think part of it was like I didn't see myself as like the founder or like CEO in that sense until I went through a program called Color Wave. So it was a program designed to get underrepresented founders into the VC and VC funded startup space. So kind of exposure, like what is venture capital? What are startups? Coming from IBM, I said it was sort of like a startup within a big corporation, but like, we weren't worrying about fundraising or, any of that kind of stuff. So to get that exposure, a lot of seeing the guest speakers and their journeys and their stories sort of gave me the confidence to say, or to see myself in that position. And that's when I was like, okay, I think I am going to be the one to do it. Right. Because in that time between idea and when I was deciding to do it, there was no other there was no other product like it.
Right.
No one had solved that problem. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna be the one to do it. And one of the first actions I took, when a friend just kind of like jokingly said it, was I bought the cheapest wearables I could find on Alibaba, ripped them apart to the bare bones, put some tape and taped it to my watch and wore that for a week.
That was your first.
That was my first, is this thing even possible?
Yeah, it's a prototype.
I was seeing how thin is the technology. So I didn't build anything, right? I think my expenses were the other wearable, and then I just ripped them apart.
Wow.
And then some double-sided tape.
Wow.
And that gave me the confidence to say, okay, the technology is small enough, it can fit. Let's go build something on our own.
Sure.
And then, called my electrical engineer friend. I was like, hey, I have this idea. I have no background in hardware.
Okay.
Like zero.
Yeah.
AI and data.
Yep.
He's like, oh yeah, I think we can do that. So we, buy some parts on like DigiKey and get a breadboard, right, the square with all the wires coming out of it. And we sort of build our own first prototype. And like, okay, this is possible. So then that sort of got the cycle rolling.
Wow. So how many times have you heard somebody say, why didn't I think of that? And what do you think about when somebody says that?
That makes me very happy. I love when people say that.
Yeah.
I love when people say that because that tells me that they've thought about it.
Yeah.
Like it's something that they've experienced. Right. Yeah. So that tells me we're working on something that people actually experience and have a problem with. But then I think that also tells me that we've come up with a very simple and creative solution. Right. Some things don't need to be that complicated.
Yeah. Sure.
We're doing a lot of cool stuff in terms of growing and building the technology, but at its core, it's a very simple solution to this problem. Right. And I think there's beauty in that.
We'll be right back.
For over a century, Indiana has been the destination for sports innovation and the state where champions are crowned. Now, we're entering a new era with Sports Tech HQ, a place that inspires innovation and invests in entrepreneurs who are changing the game, one startup at a time. Welcome to the crossroads of sports and technology. Sports Tech HQ, home of the game changers.
Tell us where you grew up and school. Where'd you go to school and kind of what were your interests growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. I grew up in Marquette Park, working class neighborhood. Big family. I'm one of 6, so I'm right in the middle.
Wow.
So never a quiet moment in the house. Went into the local community school growing up, and then in 8th grade I got a scholarship for low income, high achieving students.
Yeah.
Where I ended up with the opportunity to go to boarding school in Concord, Massachusetts. So that was really exciting.
Wow.
It's just even the difference of I remember going to visit the school, and something as simple like the students were discussing the book they read and like having like a thoughtful dialogue about it. I had never seen that before.
Wow.
So I remember as soon as the day was over, I looked at my mom. I was like, Mom, I want to go here. I was so excited.
Yeah.
So very grateful for that opportunity.
So at 14, you left Chicago for Boston.
Ventured off.
For boarding school.
Yep. And all I've seen about boarding school is like Zoe 101, the old like Nickelodeon TV show. So that was the impression I had.
Yeah. Harry Potter, maybe.
Yep.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Was it like that at all? I mean,
not quite. We didn't have the Gothic kind of, the traditional New England boarding school.
Yeah.
It's actually in the historic town of Concord, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So think Revolutionary War, Battle of Lexington and Concord, that town.
Wow.
I remember I would in history class for U.S. history, we're reading about the American Revolution, and there's a cartoon drawing of like, the soldiers marching down, and you see like a church and a cemetery, and I look out my window and I see the steeple. I'm like, oh, we're right there.
You're
right?
there. So tell me a little bit about the scholarship that you got at 14 years old, and you think about like opportunity associated with that. A kid from South Side of Chicago, grew up in a family of 6, and how that changed your trajectory at 14. And did you know it was going to change your trajectory at 14?
I did not know. But it was different. So I'm the only male in my family who didn't go to the local all-boys Catholic high school. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, girls go to this school, boys go to this school. Yep. And I thought I was going to be on the same path. I remember I got an award for this high school St. Rita, and I got an award. It's called the Mustang Award. Okay. For 8th graders who demonstrate all the traits of being, that person. So I remember when I was not going to go there, I was like, do I have to give that award back? But no, the scholarship was the Dane Murphy Scholarship in Chicago. Okay. They've served thousands of students now. The point is to create opportunity, and take students and sort of launch them both at local schools in Chicago, but also all across the country. I have friends who went to school in, California, where part of their curriculum is waking up at 5 a.m. to go tend horses, or ones in like Pebble Beach, and there's a big golf element to there. Yeah. So just new opportunities that coming from Chicago, had never really thought of. Sure. And I think for me, one of the things that stands out about that experience that I still think about today is just the impact of the adults in your life at that stage. I didn't go searching for the application for the scholarship. I remember I think I was leaving school at the end of the day, and my principal just like cuts me off in the hallway, and she says, "Here, fill this out." That's it.
Really?
Just, "Here, fill this out."
Yeah. So your principal changed your life.
Yeah. 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 Miss Christian. Shout out.
There you go.
Absolutely. And I just went through the process. Right. Yeah. And just never know where it's going to take you. Because even with the scholarship, right, I was very set on staying in Chicago. I was like, I'm not interested in boarding school. I remember there's a box on the application, like, are you interested in boarding school? And I checked no.
Oh, wow.
But I found out later, I went back to speak to the director. I was like, I checked no, right? She was like, yeah, I saw that. And then I met you. And I was like, you should go to boarding school. Like, you can handle boarding school.
That's cool.
Right. So, maybe I wouldn't say it was against my will, but I think it turned out all right.
And so you're in Boston for boarding school. And so tell us a little bit about your college career.
Yeah, I chose to stay local at Tufts University. I applied to a bunch. And as I was trying to decide where I wanted to go, my thought process was really about the people in my life at that point. Right? I figured, if I go somewhere other than Boston, I'll probably lose these relationships that I've built over the last 4 years in high school. Right, because I really only will go home on the holidays and can't not go see my family. So I was like, I'll stay here. And I think what that allowed is to continue to nurture. Right, so friends would come back for the holidays for school, and I was kind of the home base. Right, like they would come to Tufts and hang out. Yeah. So it really allowed me to kind of continue to nurture those relationships. So that was like the deciding factor. I was like, I want to stay in the Boston area. Sure. Kind of Cambridge, Somerville.
Yeah, not a bad area.
Yeah.
Especially for education.
Lots of schools.
Yeah, kudos to you. What a great institution.
And I also had a lot of friends who did go to Boston College, Boston University. Yep. So that also, gave me sort of a more opportunity to explore.
Sure. You got a network there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So your major at Tufts?
Majored in economics and entrepreneurial leadership.
Okay.
I think, when I realized I wasn't going to be a doctor, or, go the engineering route. Like, how do I justify, college to my immigrant parents? Yeah. I was like, okay, economics, that gives me the theory. Entrepreneurship, that gives me more of the practical side of it.
You spent a little time at IBM, about 6 years, and you're working on the Watson project, which, the proliferation of AI as we know it today really kind of started a long time ago. And you were part of that. Talk a little bit about what you learned at IBM in your 6 years there working on that project.
Oh, so cool. It was fresh off the Jeopardy win. Watson beats Jeopardy.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
Ken Jennings saying, "I'm ready for my AI overlords." Yeah. So this was right when the group was formed to commercialize it. So we were part of the people driving the what is AI conversation and educating the market.
Sure.
And I think what was really cool about Watson at that time was it felt like a startup with all the support of a big organization.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of opportunity. It was a small group when I joined, so there was really opportunity to do everything. So I joined through a leadership development program, which I teach now, and I advise all my students, like, look at those opportunities. If you're not sure what you want to do, get in the door through those kinds of programs so you can kind of figure out what you want to do within the organization. So I remember I did a rotation in marketing. I was like, this is cool, but I don't know if it's quite what I want to do. Did a rotation in product management, which was my previous internship experience. So I really like that. It was a bit more in the healthcare space, which I didn't think I would come back to, but here we are.
Yeah.
But where I landed was in the public sector. So how AI was going to be used in national security, law enforcement, education, public services. It was really cool because I was going, traveling to DC a lot to meet with a lot of those organizations and kind of having the conversations and building use cases for, how they were going to use AI. It was a lot. The conversation was like how to get ready for it.
Yeah.
Right. So is your data in order? Are you picking the right use cases for AI?
Yep.
So it was a really exciting time.
So how old were you then? Mid-20s?
22, 23.
23. You're traveling back and forth to DC, talking to government agencies about AI and what they need to be prepared for.
Yeah.
That's pretty
really
impressive.
exciting.
That's pretty impressive.
And then in my time there, I remember I'm very big on like creating a good strong feedback loop, right? So I'd be talking to the customers and relaying that feedback to the product management team. Sure. And, I'd always hear, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. So I think at some point I just was like, well, what can you do? And I had the opportunity to move into product management. And I absolutely love that role.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to see what does it take to bring a first of a kind product to market, right? Something no one's done before.
Yeah.
And at scale.
Yeah.
And I love product management because you're the quarterback. Yeah. You're right, on the sports tech way of like, you're the quarterback of your team. You're the CEO of your product. You're in the middle of marketing, sales, engineers, designers.
But yet you're at IBM. So you're kind of in this IBM safe zone, if you will, but you're learning kind of all of those skills, which
absolutely,
that's really cool.
Absolutely.
So your journey between 2019 and 2024, was it bumpy? Has it been smooth? Tell us about maybe like a milestone within those years that really kind of gave you jet fuel for the next step.
A big jump was when I started working on this. I was living in Oakland, California. So sort of a year and a half into the pandemic. I was like, okay, I'm going to start this company. I hadn't seen my family in a year and a half. It was just, being respectful of lockdowns and everything. So decided, okay, now's the time to move back to Chicago. I'll build there, build with family. And after I had decided to move back to Chicago, I found out I was talking to a mentor, like, hey, I think I want to build this product. He's like, oh, you should go check out this place called M-Hub. He literally just said it in passing. So we're like on our call. I'm just like Googling, like, what is M-Hub? Mm-hmm. And it's the largest hardware innovation space in the nation. Think like half WeWork, half prototyping and manufacturing lab. And I was like, no way this place exists back home where I'm about to move to start. I just like felt like all the stars were aligning. So like enabled me to do this. So join the community of people who've done what I'm trying to do. Like that's one of my biggest advice to people is, if you're trying to start something new, go find people who've already done it. They're similar or adjacent. Learn from them in whatever way you can. Build those relationships. The community has really helped me skip a lot of the timely, costly mistakes that people often make, especially in building a physical product, right? You can spend a lot of money on things you can't use. So they've really helped me accelerate that process. So that was November 2021. Sure. Brought on my first engineer that I met at M-Hub in March of 2022. And I built with him, built the very first sort of custom prototypes, brought on my CTO in early 2023, April timeline. Got into Techstars Sports here in Indy. That's kind of how we ended up in Indy through that program. So those are some of the big milestones sort of along the way of sort of building product, all along the way is trying to reach out to as many people. So one, continue customer discovery to ensure we're building something people are going to want, building sort of relationships with the watch industry.
Yeah.
We're finding that our problem also solves a big problem for the industry. So not just the end user who wants to wear their their heirloom watch, but also for the watch companies who were coming in as a solution to one of the problems they're having.
Yeah, that's interesting because some of them don't want to get into the the tracker space. They don't want a wearable watch. They want the traditional watch, and you can kind of offer something that helps them, but helps you and helps the users of the watch. So that's really good. You were at CES in 2024 recently in Vegas. And so you think about that seminal moment in IBM, you're in Oakland, you end up in Chicago, and then Indy for a summer at Techstars, and now you're here in Indy. And you're at CES with kind of an Indiana contingent, especially in the Venetian at the Eureka Park where a lot of the startups are. And so talk a little bit about that experience, what it did for you guys.
Oh, it was so cool.
Yeah.
It was so cool. I'm a nerd at heart, big techie.
Yeah.
I talked about ripping apart wearables, but I used to do that with all my electronics. Yeah. Like as soon as my older brothers were done with their Game Boys or like the life was over, the first thing I did was like unscrew them and like look at the insides. Yeah. So I've always been into like tech and electronics in that way. So the Consumer Electronics Showcase it's like the Super Bowl for electronics. So on the personal side, I was geeking out, being able to go see other companies and booths and everything like that. Little side dream I always had to attend, but also then even bigger for the company, right? I think almost having that stamp of validation of, this is a product ready to go to market. Mm-hmm. Organic traffic coming by. I think we had a great location right by the startup stage. So we had a lot of just interested people. One thing that we did for our booth was we set it up a bit like a jeweler, like a watch boutique. Yeah. So we had watches in there, and the cool thing about watches is they pull people in. People love watches. Yeah. So we had people coming in or just like, oh, I saw you had watches. What do you do? Yeah. I'm like, great. Our booth is working. Like that was the plan.
Watches and cars, right? They
watches and
people.
Cars. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of organic traffic getting, for us, it's a lot of good feedback, right? What are people's reactions? Yeah. They're just coming by and saying, oh, this is clever. Or have you thought about this? Right. So it's a good customer discovery for us, but then also building industry connections. So meeting with, there were major fashion brands who came by. Mm-hmm. There was, for me, the coolest part was like when people would come up with a clipboard with our name on it, with like specific questions that they were there to find out.
And their homework.
Right. Yeah. So meeting with like fashion brands, watch brands, different manufacturers, electronics companies, great opportunity for business development.
Yeah. All in one spot and 3 very long days, but that's a good
marathon.
Spot. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about how you inspire the next generation of really entrepreneurs and innovators. And you mentioned earlier about teaching. Talk to us about what you do. Where do you teach? And what do you teach?
Sure. I hope to be inspiring.
Your story is inspiring.
It's a nice end result. Yeah. Not the intent. But I've had the fortune to go back to my alma mater at Tufts University to go teach. Wasn't my intention to teach. There was a new director of the entrepreneurship program, and they were doing their diligence and customer discovery, in air quotes, of how can we make the program better? What was your experience like? And one of my reflections of my experience was I graduated as an entrepreneurship minor. I didn't really feel like I knew what entrepreneurs did, right? I was like, maybe I start a business. Like it was very vague.
Okay.
So I gave the suggestion of it would have been cool to have, maybe a class where you get to see different entrepreneurs' journeys, right? What are more examples, right? I'm a firm believer of you can't be what you can't see. So more examples, the better. So I sort of proposed this class called Paths to Entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And I'll talk about it in a second, but essentially I gave this sort of mini proposal, and the director was like, oh, this is excellent. Do you want to come teach it? Wow. I hadn't thought of teaching, and I was like, oh, that could be a cool opportunity. Good way to get me back into the, my Boston community and tap back in there. Yep. So I jumped at it, and what the course is, it's called Paths to Entrepreneurship. And the premise of the class is there is no path. to entrepreneurship. There's no one road that gets you there. There's not one career, one major, one first job. It's about seeing opportunity and putting action behind it. So every week is a different path that we've defined. So whether that's, the corporate path and the benefits of starting on the corporate path and, getting skilled up, trained up, learning on someone else's dime and starting something on the side until you don't have time for your corporate job, or jobs of the future, creators, influencers. That wasn't a thing 10, 15 years ago. And now it's entire careers, entire industries have propped up. So how do you see what's coming and build in that direction? So every week is a different path, and we bring in a guest speaker, Tufts alum, who's living that path.
Yeah.
So they get to draw that direct line from sitting in the chair to, see how unique these journeys are, where I think one of the common things we always see is you're figuring it out as you go. And I think for students, that's super intimidating.
Yeah.
Where, all the way through college, it's almost they've gotten to that point because they've followed the program, right? There's a structure that they've succeeded at following. But when you choose to make the jump into entrepreneurship or starting your own thing, you're giving that structure up. So how do you make that structure for yourself?
Sure.
So also part of our class is we do some self-discovery workshops as part of every week. Because I believe so much of entrepreneurship is knowing yourself, knowing your motivations, what's going to drive you when things get hard. Can you tell your own story, especially if you're the head of it? One of your main jobs is to communicate the vision.
Yeah.
So, are you able to tell a good story? So we put students through some of these exercises to understand a bit what are you signing up for if you're choosing to go the entrepreneurial path, because there's no playbook. Someone else's playbook won't work for you.
Yeah.
Right. Every journey is a bit unique.
Sure.
So there's things you can learn from other people's journey to get you ready for it, but ultimately you need to.
It's your path.
You're driving yourself.
Yeah.
So it's one of my goals for the class is getting students comfortable with that ambiguity. Right. Get comfortable in being uncomfortable.
Sure.
And I think we're making an impact in that way. I just had my review earlier this week for the course, and there's some comments best class I've ever taken at Tufts, or
good job.
This feels real.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which I think a lot of students now are starting to appreciate. It's this feels like we're learning about real life experiences, where maybe some of the other courses don't feel that way for them.
Right. So is it's rewarding for you?
Yeah, I enjoy it. We start every class with it's a bit of therapy for me as well. I start every class with sharing my week in entrepreneurship. So
cool.
I call this segment This Week in Entrepreneurship, where I just share my wins, I share my losses, I share the war stories, the successes. So they get everything. And they're very thoughtful. They ask very thoughtful questions, kind of about my experience, and kind of have me thinking I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. So it's a good back and forth.
I always thought it was, when you had a guest speaker come in, it was real world, like you said, and to hear, obviously the instructors and the professors, they've got real world experience, but oftentimes they're teaching from a textbook. And so when you can hear somebody that actually went through what they've gone through, it just opens your eyes, especially if they didn't know where they were going when they started.
Right.
That's inspiring.
We have a textbook as well for our type A's,
yes.
Who need that kind of structure. But I think to supplement our textbook, we do a lot of podcasts, we do a lot of YouTube videos, just understanding different students have different learning styles, different ways. So we try to sort of give a little something for everyone, where, they're not forced to read another thing.
Yeah.
Right. My class isn't necessarily meant to be the super stressful one in your life. It's meant to be, come here, learn. We're going to learn. We're going to engage. 35% of my class grade is class participation.
There you go.
Right. Come prepared. And for me, it's I want to make it as easy as possible for students to come prepared.
Yeah. The journey of being an entrepreneur and a founder is funding. And just, can you talk a little bit about your funding journey? You talked about hiring some folks. Where did that money come from? Maybe a little bit touch on Techstars and the accelerator program here in Indy, on how maybe that helped you prepare for the funding discussions that probably you're having today.
Absolutely. So a lot of the early capital was just me betting on myself, right? It's I could have put this money in the stock market. I was just kind of bet that I would make more money than on the stock market. Long term, of course. Yeah. not quite yet, but so I funded the earliest stages, and then to really get to that first custom prototype stage, I was fortunate to get what's called a super angel check. So it's like there's so many names for different like funding rounds. All have different names. Some people call it one thing, some people call it another. So super angel is almost like before angel.
Okay, got it. Pre-angel.
Pre-angel, which was super helpful, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a large, super big check, but it was enough to get us through a very critical milestone of, we've built something that is ours, that we can put under people's wrists and get feedback on. And, we did our paid beta with those units. And that, I think when you don't have a lot, you have to be very efficient with it. Yeah. And I actually really appreciate that because I feel like it's building my own discipline, right? I think you often hear about companies raising, millions of dollars really early and blow through it because they haven't developed that discipline. So, I choose to look at it a little differently of like, this is me building up my discipline, as we continue to fundraise and continue to make sales. I think the best way of fundraising is sales.
Yeah.
If you can do it with your customers, have sales fund your business, that's always the best way to do it. Yeah. But if you need sort of additional fuel to get you to that next step, there are lots of different ways to get funded, whether that's venture, whether that's accelerators. And Techstars was such a blessing for us. The capital was very helpful for what we needed at the time. But also just the program itself. It was the Techstars Sports Accelerator. So very focused on sports, media, entertainment. Here in Indy, the sponsors are Sports Tech HQ, Pacers, Colts, Indy 500, NCAA, among others. So really tapping into the community, using that as one, customer discovery as well. Sure. What do the teams need, both on-field players, back office. So it was a very good way of like great testing ground for the summer. And there's so much support from the community and follow-on investment. And I think what Techstars did a really good job at was helping us to present well. Yeah. And what I mean, I don't necessarily mean just like on stage speaking, present well. I mean, is your financial model, up to snuff? Can you talk through it? They'll poke holes in it. They'll make it very hard for you. There's a lot of work of ensuring kind of your legal diligence is all set up, that kind of stuff. But also, I think drawing a parallel to my class, they bring in a lot of guest speakers, a lot of founders, a lot of experts in branding, marketing, to help sort of fill that goal or fill any voids you may have.
Mentorship, yeah.
So I've continued to work with mentors who are helping. They're advisors now in the company, and helping with business development and make introductions. Right. And, getting some high profile people into our first user program. So I think the aside from the capital, it's always nice. Yeah. The network, and the fact that it doesn't end when the program is over. Yeah. There's a Techstars saying, which I really like, is like, it's give first, right? So lead with give first. And once you're in Techstars, you're always in Techstars. So that network is always there.
You're the family. Yeah, you're the family. Yeah, good. Okay, I have one more question for you to wrap it up. So you're changing really kind of the future as you think about wearable technology and probably how some of the big companies are thinking about what they do with their products. When you, let's say you have a crystal ball in 10 years, what does Ganance look like?
We're the one wearable you need to wear. Modular and invisible wearables, right? I think choosing to track your health or analyze your golf swing or there's so many single use wearables, and I don't think that needs to be a fashion choice, right? So I want it to be the one wearable you need, where you can, no matter what you wear, which watch, have a band, whatever it is, our hardware is kind of behind the scenes, driving all the different use cases you can think of. Yeah. maybe we have some kind of like app store or something for our device for the different use cases you might need. But it's us empowering people to kind of tell their own story and how they want to tell it. And I think such a big part of that is your own self-expression, how you look, how you feel. Big fan of Deion Sanders' quote: "If you look good, you look good, you feel good, feel good, you play good."
Yeah.
So leaning into that ethos of we can be a driving force for good. Where the thing I love about watches is they're not just for telling time. They tell stories. Right. They're a life milestone. They're a big accomplishment. They're memories of a loved one. And I think that's such a beautiful part of our culture that we have these stories. Right. You have watches that have been passed down for generations. Right. And in a way, you're keeping the memory alive of your family. So I think if we can be that one wearable that you can switch it from your watch to your band, or if you have a cuff or something like that, where it moves with you. That's what we're building towards.
Great. 10 years. We'll check back in. We'll check back in long before that. But thanks for being on. We really appreciate it. Inspiring story. Good luck. Let us know how we can help. And appreciate you being on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, and to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Sports Tech HQ. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. And remember, stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be exploring another exciting innovation in the world of sports tech.